Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid, a channel I've created to not only to bring awareness and understanding around trauma and adoption in other areas, but also delving into the mechanisms and what's at play. And with the ultimate goal of creating us understanding awareness, but also really healing. Now in this video, if you're an adoptee watching this video and you are happy with your adoption, my advice is turn it off. I'm not telling you to not watch, but where I want to go in this, sometimes the questions don't need to be asked. And due to the triggering nature of this, my advice is if you are comfortable and secure and happy within your adoption, just turn it off, please. And if you're still here, it's your choice. And you are welcome, but it is your choice. Now, in this video, I want to explore or bring awareness to the attachment structure around adoption, particularly infant at birth removals, infant adoption. For a newborn infant, weeks or months old, there are only two types of attachment. There are only two ways of connecting. There's biological to a biological family, to biological mother to biological father, and sometimes to direct siblings. There needs to be a high DNA genetic connection, pheromonally, neurochemically there to biologically attach. Or there's a survival state. There is no in between. There are no gray areas. It is biological or survival. Nothing else. My evidence for this is really, really simple. Higher brain function, prefrontal cortex, all the cognitive aspects of our brain are underdeveloped or not turned on. Well, if infant trauma is strong enough, they are trying to work with being underdeveloped. The cognitive processes of decision making, of self-aware, of environmental awareness are not there. There is no assessment protocol. It's automatic. It's all autonomic system. There is no cognitive process. Therefore, it is biological connection or its survival state. Within adoption, particularly pre-verbal, particularly post-birth, like immediately removed post-birth and the pre-verbal trauma aspects of it, every connection in every adoption is survival state. It's part of a biological mechanism that we have. I touched on it in the first video. It's part of how mammals connect when there is no biological connection. But it is a survival state. It is a threat response. And because of the early nature of it, and because most infants, when they're being removed at birth, the mothers know, their fear and anxiety crosses the placenta if they're actually trying to keep the infant. Or their hatred and loathing crosses the placenta if they want it out of them and gone. And that alters how we develop. That alters how we are born. It alters how our brain develops, how hemispheres in the brain communicate. It alters fundamentally our entire physiology is changed because of it. Now in adoption circles, this survival state is often referred to as the fog. Because like any survival state, there are defensive mechanisms associated. And when we attach an adoption through a survival state, we are there to appease those that we want to look after us. That is part of that biological method. It's hoping that this predator will not eat us, but will protect us and look after us. Stockholm Syndrome, and there are other different things that we can understand. That's all part of this mammalian survival state. where victims in hostage situations will actually protect the hostage takers because they've transferred over. That is an example of this survival mechanism. But this isn't a newborn infant or a very, very young child. Now, as I said in the previous video, the success of an adoption comes down to that simple moment. But understanding that the attachment revolves around a survival state is really, really important. And like I said in the beginning of this video, if you are comfortable or you are quite happy with your adoption, my advice is to go no further in watching this video. Because the question, if you don't ask the question, then things don't unravel. And I will also warn people that there are triggering components to this. And some of the information is not pleasant. So be mindful. When the fog collapses, when this survival state collapses, the consequences are devastating. I'm not just talking mental health, I'm talking on every level. For me, my own personal experience, when it crashed, Lyme disease and a bacterial brain infection tipped it over the edge. My entire neurophysiology collapsed. It almost killed me twice. When it came close to complete collapse prior, it almost killed me then also. That's the price tag of this. This is why I said to those of you who are happy with your adoption, please, you shouldn't be here. When this stuff collapses, it's not a cognitive thing. That is what I'm trying to get across with this. It's a survival state. Our higher brain function wasn't developed to make awareness choices and decisions. There are no other aspects than we have to become what they need us to be to survive, to live, to breathe, to eat, to be protected and safe, and all these other aspects. Even when the adoption is quite pleasant, it's a survival state, and when it collapses, it's still devastating. Be mindful. When we're looking at late discovery adoptees, ones that had no idea they were adopted and found it later on, I'm using this as an example to understand the depth of this. I've personally known a few. And through medical intervention, organ transplant, donor stuff, and other components, when they're found out, deathbed confessions, which was the last one, when the adopted mother was passing, she confessed that, all this stuff. Within a few months, they passed. These adoptees that I knew passed away. They just stopped. Autopsies were inconclusive, but they just stopped. There was chest pains and heart attacks. There was screaming migraines and stuff like that, but they just stopped. That's the extreme collapse of this survival state. When mine collapsed, I had no idea what was going on within me. I was feeling like I was having Parkinson's disease. I had no motor control. I was losing my eyesight. I couldn't hear things garbled. I was speaking different voices, different languages, like almost. It literally is your entire physiology has no idea what's going on. And it's not a moment or an hour or two. It's there until it's resolved. I'm still dealing with mine 14 years later and the health consequences of it. I've watched others who've had more extreme collapses, as I said. They just pass away. That's just the system hits the body so hard that the body just stops. It's a preservation mechanism. I've seen adoptees do astoundingly aggressive things in defense of the fog. I've seen adoptees be put in impossible positions because of the fog. accepting unbelievable amounts of neglect and abuse because of the fog. I watch every extreme that you can see because of the fog. And this is why I'm making this video, is to be mindful that the reason it is so strong with adoptees is because the majority of adoptees, this state was initiated in utero or immediately post-birth. It's pre-verbal developmental trauma. Our bodies have developed to work this way. And it's not designed to be a long-term thing. It's designed to be a short-term thing. But in adoption, it becomes a long-term thing. And the wear and tear it puts in our body to maintain this script, it has a price tag. There's a reason why autoimmune disease and cardiac or respiratory issues are so prevalent in adoptees 45 and older. It's because of how this plays out on our bodies. Even if our adoptions were great, the stress runs in the background constantly because it's developed to be that way. And there are ways to work with this, but the system has to protect the illusion of adoption being a fix, that to get the understanding and the help is not there. You spend enough time exploring a lot of adoptee forums and how things are viewed. When you're aware of this stuff, you can see how this is playing out. You can see the desperate calls that people are making to doctors and to hospitals and so forth to try to get help. It tears me apart going, I can't even comment because there is no support. Hence making this video, making these videos on my channel, to get this understanding out there with the hopes that it creates an awareness and a voice. Because there's a reason why all the levels of dysfunctionality in our society come from broken childhoods. The majority of inmates in prison, the majority of addiction, people suffering addiction, the majority of broken relationships, and all these facets come from broken childhoods, particularly early childhoods, because of the collapse of this survival state and the dysfunctionality created by this survival state. This survival state is what drives generational trauma. When you're looking at how many were removed for residential schools and the native indigenous boarding schools and in other countries of colonization, the missions here in Australia, there's a reason why there is that level of dysfunctionality. And it starts with this survival state. This is where it begins. And all the layers and structures and constructions within it. So I'm not apologizing for what I've said, but I'm apologizing for the heaviness of it. But it needs to be said. Our stories need to be understood. For all those who know adoptees, we can mask. It's why it's called the fog. We mask it. We mask it and we mask it and we mask it to various layers of success. But it is always there. And it'll either slowly collapse or it will completely collapse. So please give us the grace and the understanding of this is why. We are not choosing to do this. This is our response because of what happened all that time ago. As always, I love your guys' comments and emails. Please be mindful, please be respectful. And I'll see you next time. Hope.